Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. I want to talk to you this morning about a little bit different subject, although it's related to the other things that I've been talking about these past weeks and months. But specifically, I want to talk with you about grief. As a pastor and a therapist and former hospice chaplain, I have a lot of experience working with people on all different kinds of grief. And I think it's pretty safe to say that just about every person that that I know, as well as ourselves, are coping with some level of grief and has been for a sustained period of time. That could be with all the changes and upheaval that have come to our lives with COVID. That could be because of directly experiencing the illness. It could be because of the direct loss of loved ones or friends or colleagues, whether it's due to COVID or something else. There's also a kind of a unique group of people that has experienced sustained and multiple losses over time, and those are people who are first responders or people who work in healthcare or direct care of any kind for the most vulnerable among us, which could be children, which can be elders, which can be anybody along that spectrum. And our care workers are experiencing multiple and sustained losses. Oftentimes, they can be grouped together losses. And what's especially hard, although this can be true for everyone, but for healthcare workers and those who are direct caregivers, is that when we experience losses, we have to compartmentalize those losses to sort of place them aside and store them somewhere so that we can go on and do our jobs. And when there is a series of sustained and multiple losses, what happens is those losses that are stored away pile up and up and up and up. And if we never get to process them, either by maybe perhaps rituals or ceremonies that our organizations may have, or ways of acknowledging these kinds of things, which now, because of the situation with COVID, a lot of those things are not available to us. It makes grieving harder, and those losses that are stored there stay there. They can't be acknowledged and discharged and sort of processed and integrated. And what happens when we don't do that is those losses start to show in our mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual, cognitive, physical well-being. We can start to show signs of depression. We can start to show signs of anxiety, have a loss of energy, not want to show up to work anymore, just have to sort of numb ourselves in order to get through work. We might become irritable with colleagues. We might not want to step up and do extra work because it's just too hard. And a lot of times that is extra grief that we're carrying that has not allowed, or there hasn't been a way to discharge and integrate and process all of that. So what I'd encourage you to do is be intentional with the ways you personally discharge your grief and loss, and acknowledge that it's there. Loss and grief is a part of being human. It means that we have loved. It means that we have cared. It means that we have given and received. There has been relationship. And that's good. That's all good. But it can hurt to let that go. That's natural. It's expected. So what's important is finding intentional ways to acknowledge grief, whether that's talking with our colleagues, whether that's creating for right now a safe way to memorialize people or our losses, whether that's finding a way intentionally to discharge that grief in our own personal lives. If you're a person who exercises, maybe you run with the intention of discharging grief, or you're remembering the people that you've lost while you run. If you may journal about it. Certainly any of the anxiety or stress management kinds of things that I've talked about can be helpful with that. Sometimes people are afraid that their emotions will overwhelm them, and I'll encourage people to set a timer for 5 or 10 minutes and then cry or be angry about the situation or frustrated or whatever it is. And when the timer goes off, you're done with it so that you feel you have some control over your emotions. You won't be overwhelmed. If you feel yourself coping in unhealthy ways, sleeping too much, eating too much, using substances, shopping too much, being irritable, can't sleep, all those kinds of things that are signs of anxiety or depression, what they really might be are signs that you need some help discharging your grief. Certainly, you can talk to a pastor, maybe a colleague at work, a rabbi, a therapist. I'm certainly available to help with these kinds of things. Jan at therapysecure.com is the way to get a hold of me. But it's important during this time that we take time to acknowledge our grief. It simply means that we're human, that we have loved, that we have cared, and that's a good thing. Take good care, everyone.